Fantastic. And we are live. So thank you for joining this week's Ecom Weekly Live. We're going to be chatting about improving your velocity of LTV through retention marketing. We'll spend a good chunk of the conversation focused on retention marketing, but we'll also really dive into the different levers that you have at your disposal as a D2C brand to improve the velocity of LTV and also your full LTV. But really, we'll be focusing on the concept of velocity of LTV today. So to dive into it, today's goal, very simply put, as mentioned, we're going to be looking at understanding velocity of LTV and of course, the difference between velocity of LTV and full LTV, and then the levers available to actually improve these metrics. Quick introduction. So I am Liam, one of the founding partners at Apple Group and co-founder at Allen. A little bit more about my background here. So at Apple Group, we're a marketing, financial, and software services company for e-commerce brands. So we specifically work with scaling direct-to-consumer product-based businesses, typically ranging from 5 to 100 million in annual revenue. Worked with over 100 brands all time here. And typically we're managing spend anywhere from a couple $100 a day on the very low end to multi six figures per day on the high end for some of our highest spending clients, and experience everywhere in between. So that's a bit about Apple Group. The Allen side of things is an internal product that we've developed at Apple Group with use cases across email marketing as well as inventory. Our new feature on the email side of things is a feature that essentially allows you to run email marketing like Ads Manager. So we call it like Ads Manager for your email marketing. And the goal here really maximizing revenue per recipient with one-to-one email personalization. We also, again, have demand planning and inventory forecasting features and some very cool features to utilize inventory data to merchandise your marketing channels such as Klaviyo and email, et cetera. So a bit about that. There should be a pop-up here that pops up for you that you can click into to learn more about the tools here. The agenda today. So we're going to be focusing on two core things. Firstly, understanding LTV versus the velocity of LTV. And then we're really going to be diving into the levers to improve your velocity of LTV as the bulk of the conversation. So first, understanding LTV versus velocity of LTV. So let's dive into this. You've likely heard of LTV. I'm sure pretty much everyone in the D2C space has heard of the concept of lifetime value and the importance of it as it pertains to your ability to scale as a business and also the value of your business as a whole. So very simply put, LTV is the total value of a customer over a specific time frame, often assessed over a 12-month period or a trailing full LTV. The velocity of LTV is a different way to look at LTV as a whole, and it's really the rate at which the value of a customer grows over a specific time frame. We often assess this at Apple Group over 30, 60, 90 days after the initial purchase. The reason being is that if we can get the value of a customer to increase more rapidly on a 30 to 60 to 90 day time frame, the brand's going to have more ability to take that and reinvest it into the growth of their business. As you can imagine, a brand that has a 12-month LTV of $300 as an example versus a brand that has that value of a customer increase to $300 on a shorter period of time, such as 3 months, et cetera, or for lack of a better term, let's just pretend that was the same brand. Naturally, the second scenario where you have that velocity of LTV increase very rapidly over a shorter period of time, you're just naturally going to have more money to reinvest into the growth of your business, buy inventory, spend on ads, et cetera, and scale more sustainably, as opposed to waiting for a much longer time to recoup that margin from a customer that you're shooting for. So down here, while LTV really tells if your brand is healthy, velocity tells you if your brand can scale. Now, there are brands out there that have very poor LTV and very poor velocity of LTV, but are still able to scale healthily. However, in most cases, brands that have a higher velocity of LTV and of course a longer cumulative or a larger cumulative LTV typically have a much easier time at scaling aggressively. So why it matters, high LTV with low velocity creates kind of what you'd call a cash gap, where you spend the money on acquiring a customer, but have to wait months to actually recoup your margin off of that customer that you're desiring to reinvest into growth. The higher the velocity, the faster the payback, the more capital you have to buy inventory, reinvest into ads, buy more customers more often. So now let's dive into the levers to improve your velocity of LTV. Since we've defined these two concepts, we're going to get into what are the levers that you have at your disposal as a D2C brand to improve the velocity of your lifetime value. So lever number one is very much just maximizing day zero. So the actual average order value of a customer. This is kind of LTV. Obviously, this day zero revenue is still going to be calculated into your LTV equation. But nonetheless, this is really before that LTV trend starts to take shape. But naturally, this is the first instance that you have as a brand to increase the value of a customer to you, and that is AOV. So increasing the base velocity by getting more cash upfront is obviously step one in the equation. So how can we implement in-cart upsells, free shipping thresholds, bundles, offer testing, etc., to boost AOV? And naturally, if we can increase the average order value on order number one and extract more revenue out of those customers and margin out of those customers initially, we're just going to be in a better spot as opposed to if we have a very low AOV, and that really hinders our contribution margin that's generated on that first order, which is typically driven through paid media in many cases for most brands. Lever number two is what we kind of call the 0 to 60-day window. So this is where we get into the post-purchase journey for customers that have purchased from you and are kind of still engaged. So you can really look at it as that kind of initial 0 to 60-day window, particularly the first 14 to 30 days, is really when you're going to have, in all likelihood, the highest level of engagement for most people that have subscribed. So we can look at post-purchase upsells, which is still kind of increasing that initial order value if you're doing it, one-click upsells right after the checkout, but before the thank you page. But we can also look at really leveraging the email and SMS side with post-purchase sequences, campaign strategies to recent purchasers, etc., to try and boost the velocity of that LTV and get them to come back and purchase quicker or add on to their order that they just purchased. Excuse me. In most cases, what we'll do is we'll build out a pre and post-purchase funnel within email, where we're basically focusing on that post-purchase pre-delivery and post-purchase post-delivery funnel. With the pre-delivery side of things, we're really looking at essentially educating the customer on the brand, cross-selling based off of what they've initially purchased. Before they actually receive the product, they're going to be very affiliated with the brand. They know that they're waiting for this item. They've already given you their credit card, so you know that they actually are willing to buy from you. So we have this kind of short period of time where they're likely going to be very engaged with the emails that we send because they're on the lookout for their order, etc. So using that real estate is very important to try and educate them on the brand, other products that you have that complement the ones that they purchased, to try and get them to repurchase in that time frame. The other aspect of this is the post-purchase, post-delivery. So after they've actually received the product, again, there's going to be a period of time where they're going to be very engaged because they have just received the product. They're either trying it on, wearing it, consuming it, whatever it is. So their affinity with your brand is going to be very high, and they're likely going to be much more engaged on the retention side. So there's these two windows, pre-delivery, post-delivery, that we really want to focus on hitting on the email and SMS side. This can be done within flows. And then, of course, you have the campaign side of things where we can really go after past purchasers and break that apart in between time from purchase, the types of products they've bought, etc. Another thing that's interesting, and this is a bit more for anything that's consumable, ingestible, or complex, whatever it may be. Take supplements as an example. Let's say your product requires a certain consumption pattern to actually notice the benefits. A customer who knows how to use the product correctly will not only finish it faster, but also see the results and reap the results of the product that are noticeable. So the post-purchase pre-delivery timeframe, and also once they've received it, that education component is actually very important for brands that require it. Also very important not only for them to maximize and get the most out of the product, but also to incentivize further subsequent purchases, because once they actually understand how to use it, they're going to go through it faster. They're going to actually reap the rewards of it if it's something that a certain consumption pattern is what's required to lead to the desired results, which will ideally lead them to coming back and purchasing. So very important for brands that have that education component needed within their product is to really hammer that piece once the customer is bought in that post-purchase sequence. Another good piece of kind of tidbit here, and this is very consistent across pretty much every single brand that we ever work with, is the moment of highest intent. Customers are most likely to engage with your brand in the first 14 days. So that's why we typically break our post-purchase journeys up between pre-purchase and post-purchase, or pre-delivery and post-delivery. Keep mixing that up, in order to really focus on this time frame where we're going to have the highest engagement we likely ever will on average from a customer. If you're waiting 45 days, 30 days, whatever it may be, to cross-sell and kind of remarket to them, you're really missing the golden time frame where you can very much push for that cross-sell, and that'll pay dividends across your entire list if you build this structure in appropriately. The goal is to compress your second purchase from kind of an average, which you often see anywhere between 60 to 90 days, to try and get it down to 15 to 30, even 30 to 60 is going to move is going to be a drastic improvement for your business from a capital standpoint and your ability to reinvest into growth. So we'll go to lever number 3, which is offer and subscription testing. Truthfully, the biggest lever you have as a D2C brand to meaningfully impact the economics of your business with respect to your ability to scale and your efficiency across the board is winning offers and offer testing. If you're a brand that has the ability to do subscription, great. That's something that is fantastic to push here as it pertains to velocity of LTV. Naturally, if you can get people on subscription, that's going to boost the value of that customer over time and also the rate at which they're coming back and purchasing within that subscription structure. But offer testing fundamentally is one of the biggest levers that brands have in the D2C space to meaningfully impact their ability to scale. Whenever you are running offer testing, it's important to try and have kind of what we would call essentially a closed feedback loop. So you essentially build creative on the ad side, a landing page that replicates the offer you're looking to push, attach it to those creatives so you can get a really good sense of, in a closed environment, is this offer actually performing better than the other offers I'm running? And is this going to be a scalable funnel for me long term? Things like obviously gift with subscription or gift with purchase, X% off, versus X% off the first order is something that is an interesting kind of value add as opposed to just giving a discount right up front. Defaulting to subscription. So if you have the ability to run some sort of subscribe and save or subscription model as a business, having this pre-selected on the product page to try and lock in that velocity immediately, you can look at it that way, is definitely going to ideally increase the take rate on subscription. But when you are a brand that has the ability to run subscription, offer testing really becomes, how do we increase the take rate on subscription as a whole? Can we get more people actually subscribed? I'd say 99% of brands that we've ever audited that have a meaningful amount of subscription revenue, the value of a customer that subscribes is much larger than one-time purchasers. So our whole goal becomes crafting offers that are going to get a higher percentage of people to actually subscribe as opposed to one-time purchase, because we know that that customer is just worth way more to us. And an interesting concept here to think about is that if you know that subscription revenue is worth way more to you than one-time purchasing revenue, when you're looking at the cost associated with acquiring a customer on subscription or one-time purchase, you need to look at that and kind of bifurcate it, because in all likelihood, if you know that, hey, a subscriber is worth way more to me, twice as much to me over 6 or 12 months as a one-time purchaser, maybe even more, you're likely going to be willing to pay a little bit more on acquisition to actually acquire those customers. So very important to understand that and also look at assessing that and bifurcating those two kind of streams of acquisition based off of whatever your offer testing strategy is, because it's going to be incredibly important to understand if you should continue pushing that offer more aggressively and how much you're willing to give up on acquisition and how much more you're willing to pay for a customer based off of how much they're worth long-term to you. We'll go into offer number 4 or not offer number 4, lever number 4, and that's product expansion. So realistically, continuous product expansion and testing is something that we see some of the best brands out there doing. Constant testing of new products. And one really interesting thing here to understand too is that some of the best brands out there that we've worked with and spoken with understand that there's acquisition products and there's retention products. And not every single product that you release is going to end up being a top performer on acquisition. And not every product that you release is going to end up being a retention product. But understanding when you do release these products or when you do develop them, what are you trying to develop them for? Is it something that's really an acquisition play where you're going to be focusing on getting customers in with this product? Or is it something that is going to be very much utilized for subsequent purchases as kind of a retention product? So developing products with that mindset is important. And also understanding that if it doesn't work on acquisition, but it works on retention, that might be a winning product for you long term if you can actually be proficient at getting people to have a high take rate on that product after they've initially purchased from you. So just because it's not working on acquisition does not mean that it's not a product. It's a product that's not worth keeping around. So the concept that your products often dictate LTV potential is very true. LTV is often baked into the product. So the product is the thing that's going to drive LTV the most. All of these levers from an offer standpoint we'll get into the next slide on retention marketing standpoint. All of these will move the needle, but they're going to be incremental gains, which still obviously, if you can stack incremental gains is going to be very meaningful for the business. But fundamentally, your LTV is very much baked into the product. If you just think of how you go through certain products in your day-to-day life, you can kind of already see where we're getting at here. If you are selling a pair of shoes, obviously, depending on how much you're wearing them, but the repurchasing pattern is probably going to be much longer than if you're selling supplements. If somebody's a religious supplement taker of any kind, you're going to be replenishing those on a recurring basis. Whereas shoes might take a while to go through. The best example of this is really something like a mattress. That's obviously something where someone's going to have that product for a very long time before replenishing. But if you can roll in other products, sheets, pillowcases, eye masks, earplugs, whatever it may be, nose strips, things of that nature, that's where you can start stacking those retention-oriented products and getting people to actually buy from you more consistently and increase that velocity of LTV. So that's really the frame of mind that needs to be taken when it comes to product expansion and how that impacts LTV and the velocity of LTV. So lever number 4, optimizing your retention marketing. Again, going back to the previous slide, the biggest thing that's going to dictate your LTV is going to be product and offer. But retention marketing, obviously, at the end of the day, is a very big needle mover when it comes to increasing the velocity of LTV through a lot of retention-oriented strategies. So everybody that's attending will get an email afterwards that goes through our core flow structure guide. So basically, the core flows that we typically input or put in place and build for brands in the DTC space. It'll also talk a little bit about campaign strategy and how we really look at campaigns as well as a lever to move velocity of LTV if you approach those segments correctly. But at the end of the day, within retention marketing, we're looking at the whole post-purchase journey as really the primary driver of LTV. But also very important to understand here is that you will have a lot of people that hit your site, subscribe to your email list, but don't actually convert right away. And all of a sudden, when that happens, email marketing is going to be very important in converting those customers on their first order. And then based off the offers that you're pushing, email marketing is going to be hugely valuable in trying to get them to purchase and buy a lot from you and increase that initial day 0 AOV as well. So something that's important to understand with email is that it's not just for return customers. There's also a large component of it that's focused on that new customer revenue piece as well. So everybody attending here will get that afterwards. And we're going to open up things for Q&A. If you're watching on YouTube, please feel free to join some of our upcoming Ecom Weekly webinars where we run through a good chunk of time at the end for Q&A to chat through the material that we went through today. We're going to stop the recording here. So if you're on YouTube, that'll be the end of the video. For all those attending, we'll go through Q&A right afterwards. But thank you for watching on YouTube. Please subscribe to the channel, register for our upcoming Ecom Weekly Lives. If there's any topics that you'd like to see us cover or any guests that you'd like to see us get on, please list that as well in the comments or shoot an email over. But appreciate you all joining and watching on YouTube, and we'll go right into Q&A.